Guidance to train oneself. We must use our lives to train ourselves diligently, we must take ourselves to the ultimate and final goal. This is called an excellent life. If we don't train ourselves, it is easy to get involved in things. For example, if there is suffering, we suffer until we die. So we have to train diligently in order to overcome doubt, worry, sadness, anger, desire, delusion, etc. This is called following a good example. The characteristics of our thoughts are the same, they don't differ much. Whatever one is familiar with, one thinks about that, following our disposition and character. The environment has an influence on our lives. For example, someone is born in a good family but the environment is no good, and it gives that person information that is no good. The result is that that person receives bad information. A bad past leads life to delusion and bad actions. This is a law of nature. There are certain states of mind that we shouldn't surrender to, such as doubt and worry, because we still have a way out. Try to reflect on the examples that good people set. The Buddha, for instance, he is the founder of a religion, the enlightened one, the one who clearly understands the world. We should study his example, so that we will understand why the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, religion, merit, heaven, and Nibbana, really do exist. If we still have doubt about this, it means that we still have suffering. We must understand these matters clearly and go beyond doubt. If one still tries to figure these things out, still doubts and worries, one still suffers. These things should be understood clearly and doubt should be done with, because there are teachers that can teach us how to know and see these things. In the past, I heard that Luangpor Teean Jidasubho was a teacher who taught how to clearly understand merit and evil, heaven and hell, and the paths and fruits of practice. Since I had doubts about practice, I went to study with him. When I first set out to practice, I still held on to views and opinions, and didn't accept certain things that Luangpor taught. I would use reasoning to contradict his teachings and consequently like and dislike would arise. These things are hindrances that prevent knowledge and understanding from arising in practice. Therefore, when a teacher gives advice, one should first study and try it out through practice. Luangpor Teean taught me to develop awareness, which I had never come across or seen before. He taught me to have sati, and to be diligent in building up lots of awareness. Awareness, as I had learned it as a child, and at the time that I was studying the Dhamma, meant to recollect. I had trained in awareness with other methods, for example the kind of meditation where one sits with eyes closed and recites a mantra, in order to make the mind peaceful. I used to do it that way. Everybody seemed to be teaching like that, to sit with the back so straight that one starts to sweat and one gets backaches. Some people are very serious and force themselves. That's the way that I used to do it. I trained in this until the mind became peaceful, and happiness arose which was pleasant. When I trained with Luangpor Teean, he taught me to be aware and not to go for peacefulness. He taught not to control thoughts but to just know indifferently, which was certainly a strange way of teaching. Before I could catch the awareness in practicing, there were definitely many things that snared me. Sometimes, I fell back to my old practices, and as soon as I would raise my arms to do the rhythmic meditation, I would go back to being peaceful and stay with happiness, because that was more convenient than diligently knowing. An old man of over 70 practiced together with us. He advised me not to just sit there being peaceful, because that is not useful at all, but rather, to be diligent in building up the quality of knowing, to be aware while making movements. He kept guiding and looking after me. In the end I asked myself, What's the point of being fooled by thoughts? That's just an old habit. Let's train and be diligent in building up the quality of knowing. One has to control oneself by determining that, if I get lost in proliferating thoughts, I will try to be aware by making use of objects to know, such as movements of the hands. As soon as one turns up the hand, one really feels it, one really sees it by oneself. Whenever the hands move, one is aware. When one can catch the feeling of moving more and more often, proliferation gradually diminishes. In this way, I got a foundation and really saw results. Previously, I used to think about the future and the past, but now concoction would stop on seeing thought, and I would stay with the present, stay with the movements. One really knows the movement of turning up the hand, one doesn't have to wait for even a second. One knows again and again, one really knows many times. When there is truly a lot of knowing, one becomes diligent in building up the quality of knowing continuously, just as when one keeps diligently working and gets lots of work done. So, if one really catches the quality of knowing, and one is really diligent in building it up, one gets plenty of knowing. It is useful to have lots of knowing, because whenever one gets lost in thoughts, going all the way into the past or the future, the quality of knowing pulls one back, so that one doesn't easily flow with thought. Whenever one is swept away with proliferating thoughts, one immediately comes back, one is really able to come back. We're able to train and give rise to the quality of knowing in the various postures, for example, while doing walking meditation, or making movements with the arms. Whatever you take hold of, know it. The breathing, know it. Just have only this quality of knowing, and you will have a foundation. Before, I used to stay with the breathing. I would recite a mantra and seek peace, I would force myself to be peaceful. It is useful to practice like that because one gets peaceful and understands what peace is. But when I reached the state of knowing, I understood that the state of being aware and awake is something different from peace altogether. Awareness gives rise to knowing, one doesn't stay with peace. When we blink our eyes, we can know, when we swallow saliva, we can know, moving a finger, we can know, breathing, we can know. Whenever we touch something, we can know. These are examples. Therefore, creating this quality of knowing is a kind of art. It can be created in all postures and movements. All it takes is that one puts forth effort to know what's happening within one's body. It is comparable to having a set of tools that one uses to build up lots and lots of knowing. If one does it in the right way, diligence arises. There is an old saying that says that it is as easy as rolling a boulder downhill. But if one doesn't do it in the right way, it is as hard as rolling a boulder uphill. When one does it right, one gets a foundation and one becomes diligent to practice and build up awareness, without anybody having to tell one tells oneself and creates plenty of knowing. One becomes diligent to know in using one's daily life, always trying to find ways to be aware. Even though at times people or friends cause us to get lost, we make effort to avoid that. We are careful to take the chance, to know for ourselves the things that arouse knowing, nobody has to tell us. It's like working, when we do it right we are diligent and fluent, but if we don't do it right it's like banging our head against a brick wall. We know and see for ourselves what delusion is like and what knowing is like. We know and see what the advantages and disadvantages of knowing and delusion are. And so, we prevent and deal with things automatically. One has the answers oneself and doesn't have to ask anybody. If there is a lot of knowing and one knows for long periods of time, one will see the conditions of the body, because the quality of knowing is the one who watches the movements. However, this doesn't mean that one will see this immediately because sometimes, as the body is moving, instead of just seeing the body, there are things that make us get lost, for example, feelings that arise due to unintentional thoughts, or various moods, either coming from the body or the mind. These things incite us to get lost but we don't. These things are there but now we have seen that they are just feelings. People who have trained in meditation before, will just meet with coarse feelings, and the refined feelings that exist in the body and the thinking mind, they won't see. If we build up the quality of knowing until it is the boss, it will be able to distinguish delusion from knowing, even though delusion, proliferation, was in charge before. We will be able to pass through subtle feelings without having to get involved. It compares with traveling and passing through various villages. We leave this and that town behind us, and pass through without getting involved. But someone who easily loses awareness, is incessantly interested in the thoughts that come up, reasoning in every way, and loses a lot of time by thinking. Like, dislike, and all the rest of it arise. This is someone who is not determined to walk the path. The Buddha said that, someone who is heedful is awake when others are asleep. Such a one leaves foolish people far behind, just as a well-trained horse leaves a horse without strength behind. Not getting involved with proliferating thoughts that arise is like this: one moment of knowing is to be removed one moment from not knowing, from delusion. One gets further and further removed and one becomes skilled in knowing. It is easy to know. Before, it was easy to get lost, but when one trains oneself it becomes easy to know. The feelings and the various thoughts that make the body move are nama dhamma. When the quality of knowing sees this, one understands the body. Before, the quality of knowing wasn't there yet, and one had not yet discovered that it is thought that orders the body around. One assumed that there was a self that was moving. But when one understands rupa and nama, one understands that rupa is something solid, composed of many things. One knows heat, cold, hunger, and pain, because of rupa. Nama is the mind, feelings and thoughts. It receives and knows all kinds of things. There are innumerable conditions that arise together with the mind. Anger, worry, desire, and delusion are some examples of coarse ones. They make the mind run wild and it takes them to be self. Actually, they are not self, but one doesn't know that they are conditions of mind, and so one acts following them, until those various conditions give rise to a sense of self, of me, being like that. But when the knowing watches and sees them, one understands that they are only just conditionings of the mind, and one can let go. To sum up, the body that is alive is a lump that consists of two things, namely, rupa and nama. At this point one knows how to separate rupa from nama. And so one clearly realizes the relationship between rupa and nama. This may be called the arising of insight knowledge. It is a really clear realization. Reality doesn't deceive. This point can be taken as a universal standard. Teachers cannot deceive disciples, and disciples cannot deceive teachers about it. Whoever comes to this stage, no matter what nationality one has, or language one speaks, one will see like this. Having seen it, there is no more problem, no more doubt. One abandons and puts things down, right there. When we have our eyes open we can see all sorts of things. For example, we see that this is a rock, that is a tree, and that is a snake creeping over there. It's good to see. If we don't see it's dangerous, but when we see, we're safe. But seeing with the eyes can still be deceptive because it is not a realization. Realizations don't deceive, rather, they set one free. There is security in realizations. To see is to make an end of one's burden. When the quality of knowing sees rupa as a lump of suffering, it creates the feeling of having pity on the body, because the body doesn't know anything, it just does its duty. It gives us signals of what is dangerous, for example, heat and cold, so that we can do something about it. We didn't see this before, and so we thought that I am hot and I am cold. But now we see rupa and so we know how to solve the problem. The body is suffering already as it is just a lump of suffering. One has to breathe, has to swallow saliva, has to blink the eyes, has to stand, has to lie down, has to eat, has to go to the toilet, etc. When we give it more work to do, such as smoking cigarettes, it is a burden for rupa, we make it suffer even more. The mind is the same. When we're angry, we give the body suffering. This is oppression that works from both sides, from the side of the body as well as from the side of the mind. This kind of relationship between the body and the mind is not appropriate at all. When there is the knowing, or the state of watching, peace arises. And Rupa and Nama relate to each other in the right way. Before, I used to think that I didn't have suffering, because I didn't do anything bad. That was because I didn't know what suffering was. Whoever thinks like this can be taken to be crazy, crazy with self. So, in the past, I didn't understand myself. Likewise, having or being anything, as well believing one's own thinking, is dangerous because one understands that to think like that is good, and one doesn't see that there is any problem to be solved. One assumes that things are like this or like that. One knows through thought, one is through thought, one sees through thought, and one gets and attains through thought, when one is not in contact with the present. When we're faced with facts that contradict what we thought, we don't have a way out of suffering or out of our ideas, constructed in the past. If one knows the suffering of Rupa and Nama, one will understand that they are really lumps of suffering. Pain and sickness are conditions of the body. This is called the disease of the body. Anger, for example, is a condition of the mind. This is called the disease of the mind. When we don't know this, we cling to all kinds of things and create suffering in the mind, such as love, hatred, anger, desire, and delusion. When we wake up from the disease of body and mind, we see the suffering of Rupa and Nama. It is as if this quality of knowing opens the door, and we can see through. The knowing is like an eye. Before, we had our eyes closed and didn't see, there was only just getting caught up with all sorts of conditions. But now, the quality of seeing arises because there is knowing. This is called training oneself. This is the way that I have trained myself. It is really the guideline for people. It makes one see the convention of body and mind, for instance fame, possessions, money, children, husband, wife, land, etc. The world is full of physical and mental objects that are convention, inside as well as outside. One sees this penetratingly. It is as if the power of wisdom knowledge sees that these things are conventions of Rupa and Nama, diseases of Rupa and Nama, Rupa Dhamma and Nama Dhamma. Before, we didn't see these states, and so we got caught up in all kinds of conditions. Knowing convention makes one feel light. In the past, I used to go for all sorts of things, superstition, verses, chants, and I believed in rituals. On performing some of them fear would arise, others would make me bold, doubtful, happy, or sad. I ended up with nothing because it's all nothing but convention. A thing is sometimes assumed to be likable and sometimes not likable, it can change, and we go for it all. When I came to see Rupa Nama and convention, I felt light. It is not like ordinary seeing, but when one sees, suffering disappears. The gross kind of suffering, such as suffering that comes from foolishness, delusion, and stupidity, really disappears. It compares to having finished one's studies. One is able to read and write, doesn't get stuck, has enough knowledge and is able to stand on one's own feet. What I'm talking about is a universal standard. It is a fixed formula, just like mathematical formulas. 2 multiplied by 5 is equal to 10, not 11. When all this knowledge arises, one knows what other people are saying, one knows the objects that one looks at, there is just knowing and joy. It is insight, because one now has the eye that sees the Dhamma. It is fun to watch, whatever one looks at, one hits it on the spot. Both material and mental phenomena, inside as well as outside. Whatever happens to the body and the mind, one knows immediately, and one leaves it behind without hesitation. Before, when something would come in contact with the mind would ripple. Now the mind doesn't ripple, rather, the object that comes into contact with the mind is set free. When I was still a layman, I went to practice Dhamma at the Budayana forest, in Loi province. I had to use a wooden platform from a nearby monastery, and I bought a plastic sheet to make a roof. Tattered monks' robes were used as walls, because in July there is plenty of rain. As I was practicing, somebody told me that I should understand Rupanama, because he saw me practicing for a long time without understanding it. Some people said that they knew, just practicing for a week, and they knew Rupanama. But I practiced for 2 whole weeks and still didn't know it. I thought to myself, I really have to see it in my mind, I'm not going to just remember others' words or figure it out with my own thinking. That's how Luangpor Teean taught, he taught to practice and see it for oneself. Next, I thought, Luangpor Teean used to say that he had made large offerings to the monastery, including building a ceremonial hall, all by himself. But I am a poor man, I didn't do all that. I probably don't have a chance to realize the Dhamma. These thoughts made me feel inferior and doubtful. Then I thought, but I've done some good things, maybe not as much as him, but I've made merit, built a monk's hut, and I am not a bad person, I don't have any stains of wickedness. I've always been virtuous because my parents are Buddhists and taught me to do what is good, and that's what I've been doing all the time. Especially when I studied superstition, I had to keep precepts, I couldn't gamble. My character was like this. Reflecting like this, made me a bit proud of my past because I was not an evil person, but why didn't I know the Dhamma? I asked Luangpor Teean, are there any practitioners who don't get any knowledge after having practiced? Luangpor Teean said, that has never happened. It seems that I am the first one, because after 2 weeks I still don't know anything, I remarked. Luangpor Teean walked up to me and grabbed my hand. I said, you have made merit and made offerings, but I have never done as much of that as you, I guess I don't have the merit to know. He answered, never mind, don't worry. Are you practicing sincerely? I said, I really am, Luangpor. Luangpor Teean said, practice here for 1 month. How much money do you get for 1 month's work? I answered, I get 1,000 baht a month. In those days I was a hired hand, making doors and windows for houses. This was building work, skilled labor, and I would get at least 1,000 baht a month. Next he said, if you practice for 1 month and you don't get any knowledge, I will give you 1,000 baht, I really promise you that. But you have to practice sincerely. From then on, I was energized in practicing. Practicing in those days, I would sometimes get lost in criticizing certain monks, thinking that they didn't have the same virtue as me, because I saw them playing and joking. Sometimes, they told me to go and look for bamboo shoots or to climb a tree and collect fruits. I asked myself, is this called practicing Dhamma? It made me think about leaving. But having reprimanded them in my mind, I no longer looked at others. Instead, I only watched and listened to Luangpor Teean. I didn't pay attention to others and create a mess and a burden for myself. So, I made a firm resolution to build up awareness, to build up sati. After practicing Dhamma for less than 20 days, I had an experience and lots of knowledge arose. When practicing in the right way, it becomes as easy as rolling a boulder downhill. But when doing it wrong, it is like rolling it uphill. Doing it in the wrong way is just a burden, there are many things that one doesn't like, and then one goes and thinks about them. One is thinking, reasoning, liking and disliking like a madman, and this makes one not attain the Dhamma. Building up the quality of knowing, or awareness, is not something one can think up, rather, one has to practice in order to know. In the past I had been an occult healer, and had verses and chants. When I built up the quality of knowing, that stuff just dropped off. I didn't do anything about it, I wasn't the slightest bit reluctant to give it up. There was no more foolishness, delusion, attachment to rituals, and playing around with witchcraft and sorcery in my mind, from that moment onwards. I used to think that I was a magician, able to heal the sick. An invulnerability chant has to be recited until one feels that one's body swells up, and becomes so big that it squeezes against the walls, or until one perceives a razor blade as a blade of grass. Then one has reached the end of the recitation. To do this well, one has to recite often. Magic chants depend on recitation, they depend on training in psychic powers. Sometimes I would chase off ghosts, I would cut off their heads with a sword, making a loud sound. I've done that for many people. When I built up the quality of knowing, I stopped doing all that stuff. One day as I was practicing, Luangpor Teean came walking over and asked how I was doing. I answered him without being afraid of anything, I know Rupa Nama now. Luangpor Teean said, if you get understanding from practicing in this way, then do more of it. Try to keep up with thought, watching it. This refers to unintentional or sneaky thoughts. If no thoughts occur, then watch the movements of the body. Whenever thoughts arise, be in time to watch. Luangpor taught me to work with the mind, to watch both the body and the mind with awareness, to watch and see suffering, suffering of Rupa and of Nama, to watch and see physical and mental phenomena, and convention of Rupa and Nama. When proliferation arises, one shouldn't give it priority. One should do one's duty of watching the movements of the body and the thoughts in the mind. One shouldn't give attention to thoughts that come up by themselves. Build up awareness that is in time with the thoughts arising. When one knows the thoughts in time, one doesn't incline to go with the arisen thoughts. So, it is our duty to build up awareness. When one builds up more and more awareness, in the end it suddenly meets up with thought. It is as if one opens the door and collides with thought. At the moment a thought is about to come up, we are lying in wait at the door. As soon as the thought arises, whack, we know it in time. It's like a surprise, and the thought fails to establish itself. This makes one see how wild concoction is, sneak thoughts, and it makes one see the origin of suffering. This is not like ordinary knowledge, it appears in an electrifying flash. I definitely have seen thought clearly. Before, we got carried away with thoughts, sankhara, which are the cause of suffering. We wandered here and there with thought, and we got lost in it. One is not free because of thought. To give an example, a thought arises and one becomes afraid, one starts to think about something and one proliferates defilement and craving. We didn't see this clearly before. When I came to practice with Luangpor Teean, I clearly saw how bad mental formations are. It's like a dog chasing a deer, we were able to follow and keep up with the things that deceived. It is comparable to somebody who plays tricks, they have fun in deceiving people, but as soon as we see what they're doing, and we keep up with their tricks, we then know that it is nothing at all. They really can't deceive anyone who realizes what is going on. There are two kinds of thinking, namely, first, unintentional thinking. This is illusion, it makes one get lost, on thinking one is led along the wrong path. Second, intentional thinking, never mind about that, one deliberately thinks about something well, one makes use of thought and having finished thinking, that's the end of it. Intentional thinking is crystal clear, it makes one understand merit, demerit, and the nether realms, one experiences these things clearly. I can 100% guarantee that, by understanding like this, one closes the door to the lower realms. One can be said to be a human being. In the past I was still just a person, because I didn't see convention, I didn't see Rupa Nama. But when I could keep up with thought, I stopped being merely a person. I had more happiness than before, I no longer played about like before, it was as if I had reached the shore, to some extent. If one compares it to a trader, I was a trader in diamonds and got heaps of money. Previously, I was like a trader in kapok or fiber crops. What a mess, what a hassle. And I got only a little money, a little happiness and a little merit. I thought I would get merit from others or from doing this or that, just mind stuff. There is a shift that takes place in the mind on seeing thought. To go and proliferate as before makes one's hair stand on end. To see thought helps one to behave differently than before. I really saw it crystal clear. To suddenly meet up with thought makes an end to coarse behavior. Everything that is unjust disappears. It is like bowling, the pins all tumble over, one after the other. Suffering is comparable to fruits up in a tree. When we shake the tree just a little, the fruits fall down, but not all of them. Foolishness, crude forms of suffering and anger, desire and delusion are affected, but not a lot, they are just shaken up a bit. Being a human being means to be someone with virtue. When there is virtue, there is normality, there is peace. Samadhi refers to the mind that is in order. When there is order, there is no mess and the mind becomes tame. Wisdom means to know all around, to know how to solve things within oneself, to know how to liberate oneself and not to sink down, being caught up with all sorts of conditions, but to be free. This is how I knew, and later I understood other things as well, such as angels. To be an angel is to have a moral mind, not daring to act or think in bad ways. I understood Buddhism, and I understood the three characteristics of all conditioned phenomena, namely, that they are impermanent, without intrinsic value and not self. Seeing Rupa-nama, seeing the conditions of body and mind, and seeing all things as they really are, is like having a magic eye. One sees that all things are impermanent, it is like seeing the place to dispose of the conditions of body and mind, one used to cling to. The mind becomes clean because there is no rubbish lying about in it, there are no smuts of love, regret, anger, suffering, obtaining, losing, winning or failing. This state of mind is called, seeing the three characteristics. Merit is to have an upright mind. Religion exists within us. Evil has to be abandoned at the body, speech, and the mind. If one still thinks, talks and does bad things, to take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha by reciting a formula, is useless. I didn't know this before, I thought that thinking was something refined, that whatever one thinks, nobody sees it. But in seeing it I know that unintentional thoughts are gross, they are dirty, and because of that I don't dare to think. When one doesn't dare think, how is one going to talk and act? So whatever is bad, I don't dare do it, not even to think it. This is called being an angel because one is established in the morality of angels. The kind of angels that one can really meet and see are the angels that arise in the mind, that is, one is afraid of evil, one doesn't dare to perform what is bad. As for the conventional angels, they refer to kings and important people, who have happiness and ease, without much suffering. On reviewing the previous stages, from seeing Rupa-nama onwards, it appears as if Rupa and Nama encourage us, they don't leave us. The three characteristics don't leave us. They are like a stack of provisions, or reserve players at a sports event. In other words, they are a big army. Seeing the stages all the way through gives us encouragement. One knows, sees, and understands the three characteristics, and it is as if they keep following one continuously. To be an arahant, refers to the mind that is utterly pure. When one enters the stream, that leads to nibbana, the angels come to praise one. It is only human beings that are able to reach the path, fruits of practice and nibbana. Therefore, human beings are considered to be the uppermost beings. It says in the scriptures that being born as a human being is a great gain. In the state of being human, the mind really rises higher. It is not just a matter of having 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head on top of the shoulders. That is still not a sure thing. It might be a spook, a giant or a hungry ghost. But practicing up to this stage, one really is a human being. When one walks to the plane at the airport, there are certain conveniences. On walking to the door just opens up for us, no need to open it yourself. Going up, there is a conveyor that takes one's suitcases, one doesn't need to carry them oneself. A Brahma god doesn't have 4 faces, as some will have it, rather, this refers to the qualities of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. When I understood like this, it made me think of those who don't know yet. I wanted people to know and see. I thought of this and that person. I thought of my father has died. I thought of my mother. All right? I'm going to teach my mother. I'm going to teach my brothers and sisters. What I've been saying may not be all of it, but if one really studies and practices, one will know many things and doubt will come to an end. It will make one see right and wrong. This is called realization. One will shift from being a person to being a human being with morality. Training and practicing until there is realization, will give one sufficient understanding about angels, about Brahma gods, about virtue, firmness of mind, wisdom, religion, merit, demerit, and Buddhism. One won't have any doubts, even about such matters as visions, ghosts or whatever it may be. The mind will be steadfast, not attached to any ceremonies. Everything comes to a conclusion within oneself, and so one stops searching for teachers. The teaching, by the Buddha, that says to associate with the wise and not to associate with fools, refers to oneself, one's own body and mind, which are wise or foolish. To love one's parents means, not to lead oneself to do bad things and get into trouble. Respecting teachers isn't just a matter of bowing to them, rather, one should revere their goodness. Don't try to find angels outside of yourself, they exist inside us. The Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha exist within oneself. A good person is someone who respects him or herself. When one pays respects to a Buddha image, one doesn't bow to the cement, bricks, or stone, that is just convention. Know that to be externally reverential, one should have a noble one inside. That is to say, a moral mind, a supreme mind. There is an old saying, the malicious mind is a ghost, the righteous mind is a noble one. At one time, about 40 or 50 people came to practice with Luangpor Teean, lay people as well as monks. Some people had all sorts of reactions, some people cried. I've never had those kinds of problems. Even when some visions did arise, I'd see and understand it. It is like having eyes, one looks and one sees according to reality. For example, one sees mosquitoes swarming around, one sees a snake coming, one sees thorns, one sees an overgrown path in the forest, or one sees a cleared path. One sees similarly in the mind, one knows what to do, and so there is no more doubt anymore. No more doubt about the teaching of the Buddha and the Noble Ones, about what convention and ultimate reality is, about visions, about what tranquility meditation and insight meditation is. One has experienced it plainly and there is no wavering. One doesn't go and search anywhere else anymore, one has enough knowledge. Abandoning evil, and doing what is good, is really to be done right here. At our very body and mind. One sees the mind that stealthily thinks. It is full awareness that tells us so, it sums things up for us, that is sufficient knowledge and understanding. Once, I did some teaching together with somebody who taught a different style of meditation. That teacher taught to create an image in the mind. But the group of practitioners who had developed awareness, was aware and didn't think up a mental image, they didn't get attached to a sign. They weren't stuck on all kinds of ceremonies, such as the ceremony to cut off kama, by using cloth, incense, and other things. These types of rituals are finished with, they stopped doing them. They have stopped looking for teachers that teach one to know anything other than awareness, because the real thing is right here. One identifies with the qualities that one puts in one's mind. If you care for your children and love your husband or wife, then don't create suffering for yourself and don't be a bad person. If you are a bad person, you suffer. Your parents are worried, they have problems because of us. Loving one's children and wife is not just a matter of thought, rather, one should behave in a good way, don't be someone who makes trouble. All this depends on oneself, religion is within oneself. When we are good people, how could we do bad things and end up in prison? That there are such things as the law, prisons, police, the army, and weapons, is because there are bad people. If there were no bad people, why would we have to have those things? Why would there be soldiers and policemen? Why would there be prisons? If we behave well, we don't oppress ourselves, and how can we trouble others? May you really see and realize this. Some people with whom I used to practice together with, I don't know what they understood. They practiced as if they knew the Dhamma, but their actions, speech, and demeanor looked off. It compares to going to elementary school and not getting good marks, not being able to read. One is not allowed to go to the next class, one has to stay where one is, because one's actions indicate that there are still things that one doesn't know. This is called, not getting good marks. One doesn't find the way and so can't proceed. If one really finds the way, one doesn't back up. Just seeing the three characteristics is enough to pass the grade. One doesn't get involved in conventional forms, one is able to liberate oneself in a good way. It makes one incline and flow in the direction of being without suffering. One practices continuously. It seemed as if practice was shortened, it was not as difficult as before. Before, it was as if the body moving was one thing, and the mind thinking, another thing. It seemed that the one who saw thought would pull things back and solve the problem. But now, I don't have to solve any problem, only just watching, and everything comes to an end. The state of watching means to watch whenever something arises, just watching and one passes onwards, continuously. So, I came to understand, I came to see that this is the path to overcome suffering, this is the living of the spiritual life. The state of watching is not stained by anything at all, because one doesn't get caught up, one just watches. And so, one is not involved, one is able to pass onwards all the time through seeing in a pure way. The state of neutrality means that one is not caught up in happiness or suffering. There is just watching, one sees happiness, one sees suffering, one sees knowing, one sees not knowing, one sees peacefulness, whatever happens, one sees all of it. One sees inside and outside oneself, not getting caught up. Even when people abuse, blame, or praise us, we just watch what happens. Whether it's cold, hot, or one is hungry, there is only just watching. This state of watching makes one extremely nimble, it makes one pass onwards. Having reached this point, one has a very high degree of agility. Like a car driving on a deserted road, there is no need to be careful. But when one gets to a road that is not deserted, a road where there are people, one is able to immediately use awareness and wisdom, one doesn't run away from society. Compare it to driving your car in the city, one knows which one the highway is, and which are the minor roads, one knows the red lights and the green lights, one knows the crossroads and one knows what's happening on the right and on the left. This makes for safety, this state of watching doesn't get stuck and no accidents occur. There is such a thing as mental traffic, for example, having thought something, there is concoction until a mood arises. But when awareness and wisdom are there, one passes it conveniently. Similar to a car passing, it's easy. There is no traffic to get stuck in, it's like a highway, freeway, or expressway. It's the same thing with training cows or buffaloes to pull a cart. Some cows that have been well trained, come walking over as soon as one raises the cart up, no need to force them, no need to tie them with ropes, no need to beat or whip them, they are ready to pull the cart home or to the barn. They are able to avoid stumps all by themselves and they know where to turn right or left. The state of watching sees. When one sees often, one becomes more and more experienced until one is a champion. Compare it to a sportsman or woman, who has played until he or she is skilled at what they do. Or an artist who has performed many times. A professional worker has to be skilled likewise, they must be able to use their tools to create a beautiful and artistic house. Developing awareness is the same, if one trains and practices a lot, one becomes so skilled that awareness turns into Mahasathi, full and automatic awareness. Talking in terms of power, Sathi has lots of power. It is similar to flooding water, that is able to sweep along the rubbish from the banks of a river or stream. The power of wisdom knowledge is the same, when there is lots of power, one doesn't have to make effort. It's comparable to a tractor, it clears the land completely. Wisdom knowledge is like that. For this reason, the things that are dirty, the things that are corruptions of the mind, that are stuck in one's character, until the attachment to them as being me, is as hard as a diamond, become as soft and gentle as silk, because purity of mind has arisen. The three fetters of 1. Self-view, 2. Doubt, and 3. Attachment to precepts and practices, are not just things in the scriptures, they exist in all of us. The 84,000 teachings in the Tripitaka, ancient Buddhist scriptures, exist in us, here. They are to be found in this fathom-long living body. The nature of our actions depends on our minds. One may be a spook, a giant, a devil, a hungry ghost, a human being, a person, an angel, or whatever, it all depends on our very minds. The state of watching and seeing doesn't get caught up, there is just watching and seeing continuously. In the end, self-view diminishes, that is to say, the ego diminishes. The state of watching continuously is the state of normality, therefore, virtue arises within one. It helps to destroy anger, desire, and delusion, which presently exist in us. Actually, those are the gross defilements, they are still there, but not fully, not 100%. A worldly person has 100% anger and gladness. When awareness has been developed, gladness and sadness gradually diminish. This indicates the quality of awareness. We both have moods of liking and disliking, wanting and not wanting. The state that clearly sees those moods indicates whether one is a noble one of low or high caliber. One can measure it with this. One shouldn't measure it by external forms or characteristics, such as whether one is ordained, how long one has been ordained, whether one is famous and has a title, which means in the world being this or that. That's not it. Rather, it's a matter of how level the mind is, how much does it go up and down. Is there much variation? If one still goes overboard with laughter when one is glad, it means that one has 100% gladness. This is called still being a worldly person. The state of seeing is like this. It doesn't get caught up in anything, but it is neutral, it is normal, and therefore, it is real virtue. To determine to observe precepts is external virtue, one looks after it, in order to live together in society, which is a good thing. As for the real training in virtue, it is the kind of virtue that melts and digests the defilements, so that the mind doesn't go up and down, because one sees them and so they can't remain. Doubt and attachment to rituals are abandoned, because one understands that everything is dependent on our actions, it is not an external matter. This state of watching, seeing, and not being caught up, is a formula, it is a guide in living one's life. It gives us this guidance, one doesn't have to recite or remember anything. The quality of Buddho doesn't arise from reciting the word. Buddho means to know, to be awake and to have a joyful mind. In whoever the state of knowing, being awake and joy arises, that person has Buddho in his or her mind. And it will protect and look after us, so that we don't fall into harmful states of mind. Just as the saying goes, the Dhamma will inevitably take care that a practitioner does not to fall into bad states. The Dhamma yields results, if one really knows and sees the way that should be known and seen. The more one studies, the more one sees clearly. Confidence will arise as well as deep devotion to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Noble Sangha. The state of realization and clear knowing is Vipassana, insight. So, insight is not about seeing colors and lights, heaven and hell, externally. Heaven and hell exist in our very minds. One shouldn't pray to angels, to come and help one in this and that way, that is appropriate for someone without a refuge, who hopes to find an external refuge in an illusory way. Being an angel means that one's mind has a sense of shame of wrongdoing. If everybody were to have this quality, there would be no need for prisons in our country, because everyone would protect themselves and no one would create suffering for others. So, seeing clearly in this way makes one abandon self-view, doubt and attachment to rites and rituals, it means that one turns around and solves problems within oneself. This state of watching makes one pay respects to the qualities of the Buddha, rather than to a golden image, it makes one pay respects to the characteristics of the Dhamma, rather than to books, and it makes one pay respects to the virtuous qualities of the noble Sanka, rather than to robes and a shaven head. The meaning of the word monk, is an excellent person, someone with a good heart, that is to say he or she doesn't get angry, doesn't desire and doesn't get deluded. The kind of thoughts that say, he insulted me, I won't give in, don't exist in someone like that. There is just letting go, and understanding arises, clear seeing, until there is no anger. Getting and losing, happiness and suffering, praise and blame, are ordinary things in the world. Nobody can be their owner. And it is the same with sights, sound, smell, taste, bodily sensations and mental phenomena. They are things of the world, they belong to the world, they are not ours. Even sight, sound, smell, and taste have a worldly flavor to them. People don't know or understand it like this, and so they always have a sense of lacking something. For example, one is a slave of desire. The state of watching and seeing makes one feel satisfied, there is a sense of enough, there is no lack of anything, no shortage, and how are we going to suffer? Therefore, when there are virtuous qualities in all of us, we don't get deluded, we abandon evil, do what is right and our minds are pure. The state of watching helps to cut down on things and it makes us understand. It makes us able to overcome suffering. What it comes down to is, a handful of Dhamma. The Buddha once compared his teachings to a handful of leaves. So, understanding the Dhamma, is not something difficult for someone who has reached the state of watching. This is true regardless of whether one has studied or not, because attaining the Dhamma is not connected at all with studying. Rather, it is a matter of training oneself to let go of what is bad, to do what is good and to purify the mind. That is what Dhamma is. Awareness or the perfection of awareness is not to be found in books or scriptures, it exists inside us. Don't be afraid of the ghosts outside, the ghosts are in your mind. In the Sutta, Discourse, on Auspiciousness, the Buddha said, not to associate with fools, to associate with the wise, and to revere those that should be revered, these three things are the highest blessing. A fool here, doesn't refer to Mr. A or Miss B. Gamblers, flirters, people who go to bars and nightclubs, people who drink, etc., are called external fools. But the real fools are inside of us, they are our thoughts. If we think harmful thoughts, our harmful thoughts may lead us to anger, desire, or delusion, they may lead one to defilement and craving. What does it mean to associate with the wise? It means to have good thoughts in our minds. For example, when some problem arises, we let go and don't dwell on it. Never mind, it is just the way it is. This is a wise person. Trying to not have anybody tell us off, or blame us, is impossible. But if we have good thoughts and think in the right way, and we know how to let go, we associate with the wise. It doesn't mean to get attached to this teacher or that monk, or getting deluded to the physical form of the Buddha, as was the case with the monk Vakali, who kept following and staring at the Buddha. The Buddha saw that this monk was getting lost, and so he taught him that, whoever sees the Dhamma, sees me. The monk Vakali then determined to practice the Dhamma and finally, he realized the Dhamma. This is the way that I see, and understand this matter of not associating with fools and associating with the wise. One should see it broadly, in all its aspects. It is comparable to light that radiates outwards, that way one knows completely and all around. It is not a matter of sitting with eyes closed and knowing, but one knows at the time one's eyes are open. Wherever one goes, one knows as one is living one's life as usual, being aware at the same time. The Buddha said that, whoever is aware continuously is like someone who lives in comfort at home with one's parents, there is warmth, kindness, and one is safe. What I'm saying comes from my own experience in training myself. It may not be elaborated in detail, but when you really determine to practice you will have your own experience. You will know the taste of it yourself, and learn plenty of lessons. We must experience and see things for ourselves, We must let go ourselves, we must be liberated ourselves. Once we have a foundation, we will find the path. This is a law of nature. The state of watching, the state of knowing or awareness, compares to being at home with our father and mother. Of course, then we are safe, we're free from all possible dangers because our parents protect us. This befits the saying, Sati and Sampajanya are things that are of great assistance. Sati is recollection, or mindfulness, and Sampajanya is realization or full awareness. The state of watching is something superb, because there is emancipation, there is safety, there is cleanliness, purity appears, it is lofty virtue, lofty firmness of mind and lofty wisdom. The state of watching helps support us to understand the conditions of body and mind, to know convention as convention, to know the suffering of Rupanama, to know the disease of Rupanama. And so, a transformation takes place in the mind, one becomes a human being and one who is virtuous. Pubpegatha punyatha means having done good things in the past. For example, yesterday or today we've done something good. The words in the past don't refer to before we were born, or a previous lifetime. In the past here means actions done earlier on, such as yesterday, last week, or last year. So if we have received good directions, the results will be good, and our minds will become more and more pure. The mind of a virtuous person goes back to nature. His or her body and mind are in a state of normality. The process of knowing more and more takes us to the stream of liberation. It doesn't flow backwards, it goes in the direction of the path and fruits of practice, it goes towards being a noble individual, namely a stream enterer, a once returner, a non-returner, and an arahant. The state of knowing is like a warrior who is backed up with support, and so keeps enlarging his territory until he is in charge and has power. Therefore, wild behavior can't remain, the army of the Dhamma is there. It is like a warrior who is victorious, there is awareness. The state of watching and seeing is the victory of the warrior. One practices right at this point. Nothing can obstruct, there are no enemies that can resist, and so one is fluent. The state of watching makes the cankers of sensuality, being and not knowing, unable to remain. These cankers are refined defilements that ferment in the subconscious, until they become habitual. The state of watching stops the enemies, or if they don't stop, they'll dry up. It is like custard apples, some stay on the tree, all shriveled up. The enemies, defilements, surrender and don't fight anymore. The quality of knowing makes us watch concoctions in a dignified way, one is not a servant of thoughts anymore, as one was before. When proliferation starts to come up, begins to stir, the thoughts will stop when the quality of knowing sees it. It will just give up completely. When there is realization, there is nothing that can deceive. Wherever there is suffering, one is able to dig it all up. It's similar to water and oil, even a little bit of oil will always float on top of water. The Dhamma is the same, it is always on top of what is not Dhamma. This is a law of nature. Suffering, again, is the same, it cannot be on top of non-suffering. One could compare suffering with water and non-suffering with oil. I'm just comparing all the time, but when you really practice you will see clearly and have realization for yourself. There won't be any suffering and you won't think about suffering, because you regard it as unclean. Just like someone who has clean clothes on, how can they let dirty things soil it? In case something soiled it, they would brush it off immediately. It is as if in the past we were dirty. That's why we let anger and suffering stay with us for days on end, we had never met the intrinsic purity and cleanness of the mind. But when we discover the cleanness and purity of the mind, we no longer allow dirty things to be there. The suffering of clinging to the ego is a refined kind of dirtiness. Originally we didn't know that, but as soon as we really know that this is dirty, we pass through and overcome it. In this way, we're able to erase the ego and make it fade out. This state of watching leads to justness, and when justness arises, one has a proper standard, one takes it as a principle and a guideline or compass for living one's life. The state of watching and seeing makes us cross over the cankers of sensuality, being and ignorance or whatever states are the cause for wanting to be and have. The mind is liberated continuously.
May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at